tómilẹ̀ títí tó ṣàprápra tó tún lè lálejò tó táwọn yọ. SPFS TV òun ní ká máa wò ní tilẹ̀ tó ọ̀dà ṣóò ti gbó òun ní ká máa wò ní tilẹ̀ tó àǹtí ṣóò ti gbó òun ní ká máa wò ní tilẹ̀ tó ẹ̀yin àpẹ̀ṣẹ́ ti gbó òun ní ká máa wò ní tilẹ̀ tó. SPFS TV lórí YouTube subscribe ẹ̀kọ́ àgbẹ̀ tó yè kóró ìròyìn lóríṣiríṣi nípa agriculture. SPFS TV òun ní ká máa wò ní tilẹ̀ tó kó ọ̀dà ṣóò ti gbó òun ní ká máa wò ní tilẹ̀ tó kó àǹtí ṣóò ti gbó òun ní ká máa wò ní tilẹ̀ tó ẹ̀yin àpẹ̀ṣẹ́ ti gbó òun ní ká máa wò ní tilẹ̀ tó kó. SPFS TV lórí Facebook, SPFS TV lórí YouTube, SPFS TV lórí Instagram for your agricultural programs lóríṣiríṣi. Àgbẹ̀ ọlọ́sìn ẹja oríire ti dé, ọlọ́sìn adìyẹ má ṣe mí kan rárá. SPFS TV òun ní ká máa wò ní tilẹ̀ tó kó ọ̀dà ṣóò ti gbó òun ní ká máa wò ní tilẹ̀ tó kó àǹtí ṣóò ti gbó òun ní ká máa wò ní tilẹ̀ tó ẹ̀yin àpẹ̀ṣẹ́ ti gbó òun ní ká máa wò ní tilẹ̀ tó kó.
Good afternoon, dear listeners at home. Thank you for joining us on this very episode of Let's Talk Agric on SPFS TV, live from the city of Ibadan, or your state, Nigeria. Thank you so much for joining us, and we want to apologize for starting behind schedule today. Thank you so much for staying tuned as always. Today is another Wednesday, it's another time to project and promote agriculture. Yes, getting agriculture right. This is what we do on this program, Let's Talk Agric on SPFS TV. SPFS TV stands for Survival Poultry Farm Services Television, where we project farmers, we project agripreneurs. We also get to do everything and talk everything that has to do with farming, cultivation, poultry, etc. Because we need to get agriculture right, which is, formerly the mainstay of our economy, and that is where we are going back to. This afternoon, if you have been wondering how rice is being cultivated, you have been wondering how does it get harvested before it gets to your table, today is where you hear it. Yes, you hear it today on the program with our guest who is live here in the studios with us. When we come back after the break, we'll get deep into rice cultivation, rice farming. How does it get to your table? Where does it come from? How is it planted? Stay tuned, I'll be right back.
Ló ń kíyàn alátàndá ọmọ àgbẹ̀ òjò máa rọ̀ sínú oko bàbá mi bí kò bá sí orí ara ò bá ti kú ti pẹ́ bí kò bá sí èjìká aṣọ kò bá yẹ̀gẹ̀rẹ̀ bí kò bá sí àgbẹ̀ nínú oko ní kí lára àgbòrò fẹ́ jẹ bí kò bá sí àgbàdo kí la àbá máa pè lógì ẹ yé bú àgbẹ̀ mọ́ nípa ará oko ò ní ṣará ọ̀run. Ẹ̀mí orógbó ni Ṣàngó fi ń mí, ẹ̀mí ọ̀mùnù ilẹ̀kùn fi ń dàgbà. Ṣé bí oúnjẹ iná ń gbé Nàìjíríà wa ró? Ìwé kíkọ́ láìsí ọkọ́ àti àdá. Kò ì pé o. Iṣẹ́ àgbẹ̀ ìníṣẹ́ ilẹ̀ wa. Ẹni kò ṣiṣẹ́ yóò má sì jalè. Ìwé kíkọ́ láìsí ọkọ́ àti àdá.
Tómilẹ̀ títí tó ṣàprápra tó tún lè lálejò tó táwọn yọ. SPFS TV òun ní ká máa wò ní tilẹ̀ tó kó ọ̀dà ṣóò ti gbó òun ní ká máa wò ní tilẹ̀ tó kó àǹtí ṣóò ti gbó òun ní ká máa wò ní tilẹ̀ tó ẹ̀yin àpẹ̀ṣẹ́ ti gbó òun ní ká máa wò ní tilẹ̀ tó kó. SPFS TV lórí YouTube subscribe ẹ̀kọ́ àgbẹ̀ tó yè kóró ìròyìn lóríṣiríṣi nípa agriculture. SPFS TV òun ní ká máa wò ní tilẹ̀ tó kó ọ̀dà ṣóò ti gbó òun ní ká máa wò ní tilẹ̀ tó kó àǹtí ṣóò ti gbó òun ní ká máa wò ní tilẹ̀ tó ẹ̀yin àpẹ̀ṣẹ́ ti gbó òun ní ká máa wò ní tilẹ̀ tó kó. SPFS TV lórí Facebook, SPFS TV.
right, welcome back, people. Thank you for joining us once again on SPFS TV, Let's Talk Agric Show, where we represent, promote, and project agriculture. Everything that has to do with agriculture, that is what we do on this program. And right here in the studio with us this afternoon is Mr. Adegoroye Sharif, who is a rice farmer. He has been in this business for a long while. You know, I was saying it earlier that some of us even grew up not knowing how rice, just comes on our table. Just a quick joke. When I was when I was still very young, I remember one of my friends saying that she does not know that calabash is a plant. I laughed and I said, calabash is a plant. You should know that. Some of these things are things we should know as people. We are parents, you have children. Encourage them to be on this program every Wednesday from 12 noon to 1 p.m. So rice farming is what we are talking today on the program. Let's Talk Agric on SPFS TV. So I want to say welcome to our guest today. Thank you for coming.
Yeah. I'm very obliged to come here.
All right, so let's start with rice farming. How long have you been in this business? Farming generally. How did you start? Where are you now? How long have you been doing rice farming?
Okay, well, I've been into farming since my high school days. So
you're talking of secondary school.
Exactly. So, well, it's like 10-15 years ago.
Wow.
So, but then cut across all field. Fishery, poultry, crop production, generally maize, cassava. These are things that I've done before venturing into what rice is. And that is what it is now. I've been into rice for the past 3-4 years now.
Wow.
But as right as you said, most people don't know the technicalities inside rice. In fact, inside rice, you can only pick one from the value chain of what rice looks like. So basically, rice is a staple food being consumed by most Africans. In fact, even the whites consumes rice. So, but I think it's what we should know that currently, as at 2017, there was a statistic from NBS, I think, stating clearly that our own per capita production for rice is 6 million.
Here in Nigeria.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So 6 million ton. And we consume annually 8 million ton.
Wow.
That was 2017.
We eat more than we
so
produce.
Exactly. So we have a deficit of about 2 million, which represents the import. When people get rice from outside the country through smuggling and stuff. So that is what it is, and this probably has enabled the federal government to delve in fully, like where we have the IFAD. It's a program that the value chain development program that was sponsored by both federal government of Nigeria and this IFAD, the product chain, value chain production. So to just improve the production of rice in the country, you can see the government is placing so much embargo on importation of rice.
Right.
Yeah, because they want us to be able to sustain at least on rice. So that is what we find ourselves doing in Nigeria now. Rice farmers all over the country clamoring, inputs are high and stuff. But then we can't still do away with rice.
We cannot do without rice. Being a staple food.
Exactly.
It's something that we all eat every day. In fact, some people cannot do without eating rice, and that is why I find this conversation very interesting this afternoon, that we are doing this in the month of March, year 2022, talking rice farming, and it is the beginning of the rainy season. I'm sure some farmers have started planting. So we'll get to talk about some of these things, but I just wanted to start with the cultivation process first. As a farmer, a rice farmer, you have been in this business of planting rice for 3 to 4 years. What does it take, to start a rice farming business? What does it take to start depending on, looking at your experience now, what you have seen and, what you can advise people at home? Okay.
Well, basically, all I'm going to say about rice production now is not only pertaining to rice production. It pertains to every field of agriculture that has to do with crop farming. You get? One of the major problems we face currently is the land tenure system. You see, when we don't have available land, for cultivation. There's always a reason for us to start running around or making use of what we have, and that limits production. That's one big problem, because you cannot just step into anybody's land and say you want to start cultivation because you know about rice or you want to. So exactly. So that's one thing. Then the other things that comes in is the government policy. You understand? So, well, cut across all dimensions that could affect or restrain farmers from cultivating rice. Let's just delve into what the cultivation entails.
Okay.
Let's assume there's one land somewhere. You understand? Because we cannot say go and buy now. Land is very, very expensive. Very, very expensive for production. I'm not talking about construction. You want to build a house, it should be expensive because you want to put something there. But farming, you can farm a land for 20 years and leave it and go to another place. And if you want to go back again, you can still go and do it. You understand? So that does not change the texture of the farm for construction. Construction has nothing to do with what you have. You understand? So, okay. So the problem there is, well, if there is an assumption that we have a land somewhere, and the basics about land preparation, that is the first thing.
Okay.
That is like 50% of what a farmer is. Because yes, if you don't prepare your land very well, surely you're going to have either an average result or a bad one. You understand? So the previous times, I mean the old farmers, the old time farmers, I mean, in the good old times, they do a lot of bush burning just to be able to clear the land. Well, to some extent, I would not say the bush burning is bad, but then it affects the majority. Take, for instance, the chlorofluorocarbons that goes into the air to deplete the ozone layer and the pollution and everything. So, but then, you see, when we are able to minimize that with the use of chemicals or manual weeding, you know, it's strenuous. You understand? When you are not using machine especially, it's very, very strenuous. And people find it difficult now to access machineries. Take, for instance, tractors or even power tillers. So let's go into clearing.
Okay.
Now, if it is a normal land that you have been using for quite some time.
What do you mean by normal land?
Yeah, what I'm saying normal land is a land that is not having densely populated shrubs.
Okay.
You understand? I mean a land that has been cultivated over and over and over again. The level of the weed there is quite going to be different from with the ones that you are just starting to open. There you would have a very huge trees around. So if you've been cultivating a land for over, let's say, a year or two, you are expected to have less weed. I mean something that can be uprooted. But then, if you are going to be doing that, you still make use of chemical to have an effective use. What I do is, when I want to start, like since January now we've been on clearing. Okay, so what we do is, if we have a land that is okay for us to plow, we'll get a tractor to plow the land for us. I mean to just plow and turn the weeds into the soil. But before doing that, we get chemicals. I use chemicals a lot. I use systemic herbicides, Phosphop, Relisate and stuff. So when I get them to spray, and in quantities that if you require I can give to you, on 1 hectare we manage to use at least 240 260 liters. That blue tank, there's a blue tank that is almost that size. So in that we use about 3 to 4 liters of herbicide
to clear
that's the dissolution factor, then which we now spray to clear at least 1 hectare. So what that systemic herbicide does is, it's going to, it doesn't act like the contact. We have just two for the clearing. We have the contact and we have the systemic. The contact touches the grass and you can see the effect in a day. But the problem is, let rain come down and drop on it, you still see weed in the next 2 or 3 days again. So, but when you use systemic, the systemic is going to gradually decrease its strength, efficiency till the plant, the weeds they die. So giving it a slow process, and also adding up to the manure when you are turning it into the soil with a tractor or or with any kind of tiller, or with any power kind of tiller, whatever that you're using. So after then we harrow. So the essence of that is just to soften the soil. Now it depends on the kind of rice you want to cultivate. As you see, we have, well, to the southwesterner here, we have just two main types,
okay.
not varieties, types of what we can classify them to be.
Okay.
We have the lowland and we have the upland rice.
All right.
You get the lowlands are the ones, and we have the swamp, those ones that are very muddy, and so we have the swamp rice. So me, I cultivate mostly upland rice. We know it as ofada.
Okay.
That's Faro 15. So what we do is, after the harrowing, because rice is, I don't want to know the variety, it's always requiring water. So we cannot plant in the dry season except you have an irrigation system in place.
That's true.
So if you don't have an irrigation system in place, don't try planting rice.
Rice. Oh, interesting.
So when we do that, we wait for the first plow, like 8 days. So before the second plow comes in. Now the second plow comes in, and after that you would observe that the weeds, some of them will still want to come up after that 8 days. You still see some of them. Then the second turning makes the soil perfect. I have so many pictures with me if you want to display anyways. But because that thing is just very perfect for controlling weeds. The moment you are done doing that, we broadcast rice. We have plowed the first, we have harrowed.
Okay.
Now we are plowing the second time. We broadcast the rice.
Are you talking
The
of
seeds,
the seeds?
yeah, the seed of the rice, sparingly, and not densely. Sparingly, then we now harrow the second time with the seed. So after this, in 8-10 days, you will see your rice coming out gradually.
Wow.
Just gradually. So that is for Faro 15. So most of them have maturity of 4 months, 120 days. In 125 days, you should be ready for harvest. Yeah. But what happens is, before the harvest, there are so many things that comes in place.
Interesting. We
Yes.
are going to be talking about
Exactly.
that. I just wanted you to give us the overview of what it takes
Yeah,
to
exactly.
even start rice farming. We are
Okay.
still talking Oryza sativa.
Oryza
That is
sativa.
right.
Yeah, exactly.
On this show today, Let's Talk
Okay.
Agric on SPFS TV, Survival Poultry Farm Services Television, and we are still looking at some of the processes. What does it take? What is the process of planting, harvesting, to having your rice on your table, even cooking it, the processing, the packaging. I'm sure some of us have questions of, our rice come on wood, our come on brown,
right.
our come on white. I know we all have those questions. Just a quick reminder that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, yes, at SPFS TV, and follow us on Facebook and on Instagram to stay attentive and very, very attentive to this show today, because there's a lot of things I'll be asking our guests, especially concerning rice plants and rice farming. Now, we've talked about, clearing the land, cultivation. You've talked about something very significant, which is irrigation.
Exactly.
You mentioned that you cannot start rice farming if you don't have an irrigation system in place. Okay, I read that rice is a monocot plant.
Yeah, exactly.
And of course, you've mentioned the harvesting duration, 120 days maximum.
Exactly.
Being a monocot plant, what does that mean? I want our people to understand what it means that rice is a monocot plant.
All right. When it is a monocot plant, there are several peculiarities between rice and the maize, because it's also a monocot.
Okay.
So it starts from the germination from the endosperm. Now, when you get to read about maize, just the same process it grows with. When you are, this one that I just told you now, we are not making nurseries for it. There are some rice that we make nurseries for, especially the swamp rice. So if you are holding an endosperm of it, you have, when it comes to the germination period, it comes out from the radicle and the plumule. Plumule is bringing out the first leaf, and it comes in just 2 venations. That's why it is a monocot.
Oh, interesting.
Exactly. So when you are talking of a dicotyledonous plant, it comes with broader leaves, and it comes with different venation. Unlike rice is having just 1 venation and just a straight leaf, 2. And every stem is coming out in just 2 leaves. That's the meaning.
Interesting. So for students, Agric students, intending farmers. Now
Exactly.
you know why rice is called a
monocot.
monocot plant.
Exactly.
And in case you don't know, it is also an
It has
annual plant.
Yeah, it has one cotyledon.
It has one cotyledon, and it is an annual plant too.
Yeah.
Looking at what our guest has told us, Mr. Degoroye, that it takes about 120 days
For its
to have your
maturity.
mature rice seed.
Exactly.
Okay, or product. Now let's get to the mid stages.
Okay.
Now you've planted. You've harrowed after the first, second plowing, harrowing.
Exactly.
Now you've watered, or there is rain, there is enough
Exactly.
rain.
That's
What
the
are the
condition.
things that you do in between before
Yeah.
you get to maybe 1 month, 2 months?
Exactly.
That you're expecting your yields.
Exactly. Yeah, well, one of the very big condition also is soil nutrient. When we are talking about, and that's why I said an assumption in place for a particular land. I mean, when you are talking of a land, a substance, I am talking of a very good land,
Okay.
a land with very good nutrient capacity. Now, if you're having rice to have yellow leaves, it means that it lacks nitrogen. One of the very important nutrients in the soil that the rice can't do away with. So it means you are starting with your fertilization. You understand? But if you have a very good soil, very aerated, low quality good, you shouldn't have too much with fertilizer. I don't like inorganic fertilizers. I like organic fertilizers, and that's why I choose my land when I want to cultivate. So basically, you work on the nutrient. If it is a soil that is not too good, then you should be ready to buy fertilizers, or beginning of the plowing section, you should try and get some organic waste, probably from the poultry or from animal dungs and stuff. Get in sacks, put at strategic points on the field before the plowing, so that it's going to incorporate the manure with the soil. So provided that you have rain in abundance, at least it would have decomposed to a certain extent that would sustain the plant while growing. And well, during the process, you have your first weeding after probably between 23 and 40 or 50 days. So when you are weeding, because it's easy for us to weed maize, it's easy for us to weed rice. Why? Because they are monocots. Yeah, and we have very few weeds in the monocot sector. So we have most of them being diacot, and they are broad leaves.
Wow.
So when you have broad leaves, it's very easy for us to get a selective,
them.
a selective weed. You just observe this weed among the only single monocot leaves. You understand? So we have chemicals too that can actually cure that. We have aminophos, 2,4-D, dimethyl, whatever. We have propanol, and all those things. Once you have the right quantity being sprayed, it's going to be obvious, because the rice is not going to be affected by a selective. You understand? So it degrades the growth of the weeds in between the rice, whatever shed. And before you know it, when the rice is coming out, you have its kernels start coming out and all this. So you are inviting another thing, and that's a pest.
Wow. That happens to almost
everybody. And this one I'm saying now is even peculiar to the upland producers. Those people that plant rice on the normal land. I'm here to talk of those that plant inside the swamp. So those people that plant on the you have so much pests. Birds, rodents, worms, any kind of. So there is always this rest that when you are around your farm, they will not come. Only when you are leaving the farm. Now, when you are leaving the farm, because we have all kinds of birds, so we have different strategic ways of going about chasing birds. First, some people do hire that, okay, you'll be on the farm for so days to be chasing birds away. And some of them are strategic. They will tie ropes around the farm. So when you see a bird coming close to you shake the side of that rope. It controls that distance and stuff.
I've seen some use nets.
Yes, net is effective, but the problem is net has capacity that it can cover. You cannot farm 100 hectares of rice and you want to buy net. You understand? So it won't work. You cannot get net in that capacity. What you can always get is, some people use guns. Because birds are very stubborn. When they go, they will still come back. So some people use guns. They will just shoot into the air. Oh! And once they hear, they will go away. Then rodents, like grass cutter. You know, when rice is coming out with his say seeds, you will just discover it comes out with some scents. So he calls them far away to come back. Yeah, exactly. He calls them and they will come. They will, in fact, if you are not careful, they will consume more than 30% of what you have. Ooh. They are very fast eating animals. If you have seen a grass cutter eat a stem before, it can bite anybody's finger and cut it down with just a bite. Wow. That's how fast they eat. So all these are being done, and well, it decreases the productivity of what you have eventually. No matter how we manage to chase them, some of them, in fact, they will still have their own share from it. So there have never been solutions for that, really, because I don't know if government can look into that, but because then the Faro 15 or further is one of the most expensive variety that can be cultivated anytime, because it sends and it's very good to consume with its nutritional content and stuff. So people love Ofada generally. So that's it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adegoroye. We are still speaking with Mr. Adegoroye, the CEO of Gold Prime Agro Services. He came all the way from Abeokuta this afternoon to grace this very, very interesting conversation as regards rice farming. I'm sure a lot of us have questions. We'll go for a very short break very soon. But before we go for that short break, I need to ask this question. It's been on my mind for a while concerning rice, especially the fact that our mothers will tell us that if you eat rice today, eat rice tomorrow, eat rice, you're playing with a kwashoko. Yes, thank you. They say rice has no protein value at all. Now, I found out upon research that rice has some protein value, about 8%.
Exactly.
Does that have to do with varieties, or it happens to all rice?
No, it has to do with variety.
Please, let's talk about some of those varieties. Do we have them down in Nigeria here?
Yeah,
so that our mothers can hear and patronize those kind of rice, and so that they won't continue to say that rice is all carbohydrate. There's rice that has protein.
Exactly.
In case you do not know.
Yeah, exactly. Well, if you talk about a meal, honestly, I don't know the way people consume, but to me, when you talk of consumption and you want to have a balanced diet, we see rice has starch, no doubt.
Yes.
You understand? Just like cassava, you can't doubt it. But does not mean they don't have certain level of other ingredients or other nutrients. But the problem there is you cannot be consuming them just them alone. If you want to eat rice, you can put beans. Even beans that we are talking that is proteinous does not even have some level of protein to some other foods too. So you can imagine when you are combining a rice with beans, putting meat. Meat is basically protein. I mean, then what are you now saying about consumption? So consumption is basically an ideology. When people say eating too much of rice, are you eating it in the right proportion? Are you putting what is required to make it a balanced diet? That is why you should consume with what the standards should be. That is just it.
But basically, rice has a level of protein
it has.
in it, about 8%.
It has.
All right, let's go for this short break, people. When we come back, let's talk about the varieties of rice seedlings and some of the things that differentiate brown rice from white rice. Okay. Just stay with us.
ọmọ àgbẹ̀ ló ń kí yín alátàndá ọmọ àgbẹ̀ òjò máa rọ̀ sínú oko bàbá mi bí kò bá sí orí ara ò bá ti kú ti pẹ́ bí kò bá sí èjìká aṣọ kò bá yẹ̀gẹ̀rẹ̀ bí kò bá sí àgbẹ̀ nínú oko ní kí lára àgbòrò fẹ́ jẹ bí kò bá sí àgbàdo kí la àbá máa pè lógì ẹ yé bú àgbẹ̀ mọ́ nípa ará oko ò ní ṣará ọ̀run. Ẹ̀mí orógbó ni Ṣàngó fi ń mí ẹ̀mí ọ̀mùnù ilẹ̀kùn fi ń dàgbà ṣé bí oúnjẹ inú ń gbé Nàìjíríà wa ró ìwé kíkọ́ láìsí ọkọ́ àti àdá kò ì pé o iṣẹ́ àgbẹ̀ ìníṣẹ́ ilẹ̀ wa ẹni kò ṣiṣẹ́ yóò má sì jalè.
Ìwé kíkọ́ láìsí ọkọ́ àti àdá. SPFS TV tómilẹ̀ títí tó tó ṣàprapra tó tún lè lálejò tó táwọn yọ. SPFS TV òun ní ká máa wò ní tilẹ̀ gbogbo. ọ̀dà ṣó ti gbọ́ òun ní ká máa wò ní tilẹ̀ gbogbo. àǹtí ṣó ti gbọ́ òun ní ká máa wò ní tilẹ̀ gbogbo. ẹ̀yin àpẹ̀ṣẹ́ ti gbọ́ òun ní ká máa wò ní tilẹ̀ gbogbo. SPFS TV lórí YouTube subscribe. ẹ̀kọ́ àgbẹ̀ tó yè kóró. ìròyìn lóríṣiríṣi nípa agriculture. SPFS TV òun ní ká máa wò ní tilẹ̀ tókò. ọ̀dà ṣó ti gbọ́ òun ní ká máa wò ní tilẹ̀ tókò. àǹtí ṣó ti gbọ́ òun ní ká máa wò ní tilẹ̀ tókò. ẹ̀yin àpẹ̀ṣẹ́ ti gbọ́ òun ní ká máa wò ní tilẹ̀ tókò. SPFS TV lórí Facebook. SPFS TV lórí YouTube. SPFS TV lórí Instagram. for your agricultural programs lóríṣiríṣi.
Yes, welcome back after that short break. It's TSPFS TV. Let's talk Agric. This Wednesday afternoon, still speaking with the rice farmer himself, Mr. Agoroye, CEO of Good Prime Agro Services, all the way from Abeokuta. We are still talking Iresi. Yes, Horizon Sativa. I'm sure that we are going to answer all of your questions right now. Okay. In case you're joining us for the first time, please do comment on the session down and let us know where you are watching from. Very important. Let us know where you're watching from this afternoon. If you have questions, drop your questions in the comment section. We'll check them before we leave on the show. So, Mr. Agoroye, let's talk about, the different varieties. I know there are a lot. Let's just talk about some of the popular varieties of rice plants.
Well, I told you about the federal government intervention program with rice about 4 or 5 years ago that we started. It has to do with this IFAD federal government project on value chain on rice and cassava. So they came in with some varieties, and they are hybrid varieties, and mostly planted by rice farmers in southwest here. We have Faro 44 and Faro 52. Then, our local rice has been what people have been doing over years. I mean, the Ofada and stuff like that. But then, what we have majorly into now, in fact, most farmers now, the previous ones are usually OPV, the open pollinated variety, but they don't yield as much as these Faro 44 and 52. So basically, if you are talking general across the world, the kinds of rice or the varieties of rice that we have, in fact, I cannot start to name them because for the Indians, we have at least more than 6,000 varieties of rice. You have bamboo rice, you have basmati, you have mongra, you have red brown rice, we have blue rice, we have mud rice.
I'm not surprised because honestly, I heard that rice originally came from the Asian countries.
Exactly. It's China just purely you have Asia to be the pioneer, frontline pioneer for rice production. It's just, in fact, some of them are probably when they produce, some of them are just being consumed locally in their area over there, and we are not even having benefit of seeing some of them. So
you mean those
some
particular
of their
varieties?
Exactly, is over there. So, for example, when I got to see the bamboo rice one day like that, I think I went to Lekki or so, and there's a particular store there at Idowu Martins that was selling. It's like, what rice is this?
What kind of rice is this?
Very green, just like the bamboo.
Wow.
I am not sure if anybody will cook that I will eat.
Wow.
I won't. So, but then, it is what it is. Rice is rice, and and varying nutritional content is what they have. That makes them different. Some of them, the cookability. Some of them you just need to steam. You don't need to eat too much. Wow. Some of them you need to cook for a very long time. And some of them will just, when they are done doing, it still be very hard. Some of them are long grain. Some of them are short grain. So depending on the taste, depending on what people feels palatable for them to eat. And that is what is peculiar to our locality here. That's why we farmers of rice do that in a long, because you don't want to. I planted one kind of maize last year. It was from a douche. So I was just given some kilograms of the maize and I planted. But the maize was so good at production. Very, very good. If you see, it's called very big. But lo and behold, when I got to the market, people were like, what's this? And that is what it is.
Wow.
you cannot put your money, because it's an investment, stress yourself, do the running around. I told you the process of just clearing a land, and if you are going to the monetary aspect of it, you know how much you would have spent doing that. So, and you would have wasted all the resources for somebody to just get to the market and see
they are not buying.
we're not buying this. So that's why we are just restricted to what we have here. Basically, you have the farrow. That's farrow 44 is what I know. Short breed, long grain, short grain, and it's very good, and it's hybrid.
All right, let's go to the farrow 44 that you talked about, which is the Upland Rice.
Yes, upland.
Okay.
No,
that we know
farrow
as
44 is not upland, it's lowland.
It's okay.
Lowland,
It's
right.
lowland.
Yeah.
Okay. I want us to talk a bit about Ofada rice.
Okay.
Okay. Some people prefer it because it is kind of sweet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, and then when you prepare it alongside some dishes, you find out that it is very palatable and it's easy to cook and everything. What would you say is responsible? What are the factors responsible for those characteristics around Ofada rice, different from the normal white rice that we eat?
Okay. Well, it starts from the content inside the shell. That
are you talking of the seed
the
now?
seed, yes.
Okay, that you are
it's
planting.
normally brown. It's a brown rice. That's one. Then two, I mean, the smell comes from the soaking before we start to dehusk, or probably when we are trying to shell it out.
Okay.
So you soak it. Some people soak for more than 8 hours.
Wow.
Some people soak to the
After
extent that
harvesting.
after harvesting. Some people soak to the extent that if it starts to give that smell, that's when they know that it's right. But to us, it's getting spoiled. You understand? And if you don't want to waste kernels, because when you start to mill them now, then you start having much of rice following that bran coming out. So, but it gives them that smell and the taste, because when you soak it, it is when you soak it that is that sweet. So before you start to do the polishing, the destoning, the milling, the smell comes largely from there. So, I mean, Ofada rice is just what it is, because to every region in Benue State, when you have that kind of rice, it will not smell. Their own Ofada will not smell, but we know that it's Ofada because of the way they process it. They will soak for just 8 hours, but we will soak for up to 12 hours because of for us to know that the smell is coming out. And when you are done doing that, that's when you start to steam it up. When you place it on the and you steam it up. When you are steaming, it's what we call parboiling. You understand? It's not that we put it inside water and boil, but inside that jar that we do the whole parboiling process. So we just get a kind of
production of rice.
Is holding the rice is such that this is local production, because if we are talking of industrial production, it's quite different from this. But if there could be a mechanism that could be developed, to sweet the processing method, I mean. So now, when we do that, it is the steam that comes from the water underneath the lid that gets to the rice to parboil it. It's just 6-7 minutes, and at that point we just observe again with sun dry. Then we'll come back to it again, try to remove the husk, because at that point you would have seen that it's already breaking out from the soul. And that's when you sun dry. You just try to, but then you still can't get it enough, because when we are doing all those processes, it still boils down to let me say restraining of manpower. Those things should be done with machine. We should be bothered less with processing. It's not as if people will not be there, but majorly it should be done with just machines. You understand? Not manually.
All right.
Yeah, how much will you do?
But because we are constrained with by time, I want you to look at the aspect of harvesting. Now we've talked a bit processes, but I need to ask that, are there some enriching processes that is done to the rice seed after sun drying to make it more how do I put it now, to make it rice after boiling? Because you find out that you go to market, you buy some grains, and some of those grains they yield more when it comes to maybe I'm just boiling to cost. báwọn yẹn wá ṣe máa ń sọ, and you find out that you buy some rice grains that kò tiẹ̀ ní dìde ara the same cup tẹ̀wọ̀n náà ló máa jáde kí ló fà á ṣé àwọn enriching factors kan wà tẹ́ máa ń ṣe ni àbí wọ́n máa fi máa wú sí kí ló wá ṣẹlẹ̀ gan kí ló máa ń fà á.
It comes from the processing.
Okay.
When it comes from the process, then it comes from the cultivar.
And lest I forget,
okay.
Àwọn rice kan tó yẹ pé tẹ́ bá ti sè bóyá after hours kò ní pẹ́ máa melt.
Yes.
Àwọn kan dé wà tó yẹ pé kẹfí sí ẹ̀dọ́jọ́ kejì.
Yeah.
You still have your rice standing.
Yeah.
Kí ni àwọn kan tó fa àwọn nǹkan yìí?
It comes from basically the cultivar.
Okay.
The type of rice it is. Then it comes from processing.
Okay.
Yes, like what we just said now. Some people will soak for 8 hours, some people will soak for 12 hours. It's a very big point. It makes a difference in your way of cooking. Because the moment they soak water and they're able to break out from the kernel and you are sun drying them, in the process of making, there's something, sweet corn.
Yes.
Yes, sweet corn, there's a way we do something to sweet corn. We call it shocking. When we want to sell sweet corn, sweet corn gets spoils faster.
Yes.
In like 2-3 days, it starts to smell. So, but then, what we do is shocking. I shouldn't be revealing this. It's one of our own ingredients. Okay. But the shocking is, we get extremely hot water. And we get extremely cold water. In fact, we get blocks, ice blocks, to make it extremely cold. What we do for sweet corn is, we get a sack, put it inside, dip it in the cold hot water for like 5 or 10 minutes, remove it and put it inside the cold water. I'm telling you, your sweet corn will start for 1 week. It will smell.
Wow.
It will not decay, it will not decompose with that shocking process. Because you have tried to boil it and you just brought it back into a very cold temperature. And that makes a difference in the way you consume it.
You shocked it.
Exactly. That is why we call it shocking. So this is a process that we also do in rice. What we do in rice is just that when you are steaming, some people directly involve their rice in water. No. When you are parboiling, we don't do that. We just use steam. Steam is even hotter than water. Because for water to have gotten to 100 degrees C and now above that 100, absent from impurities. So it means that steam, the water is evaporating because it's getting higher. Go and touch steam and water, hot water. You see that steam is even hotter than water. So it's just even very active. It's just like you are steaming it up. Some people will just boil in some places. So these are different peculiarities in processing that affect, apart from the kind of cultivar that you have, it affects the way the rice behaves to the final consumer. You understand? And sometimes the sun may not be enough in some processes too. Sometimes the sun may just be dull for like 3 or 4 days. They don't get it. Yes, they don't get sun to sun dry it very well. And they know that if they are putting it that way, it would probably spoil with them.
So just sell it like that.
Yes, they just sell.
And with the consumers,
and you just get it. So they are very, very different, many different limitations in the process of rice that could cause that. So basically, we just hold on to what we have, because it's what we are saying now, that government should put more into the milling process. When the milling is done, but because government too cannot be anybody going into milling now, I'm not sure the person has a stable input, because when you are having a rice mill, it means that the input is purely the rice produced from the rice farmers. You understand? So, and I'm not sure if I'm bringing my rice to you and you are giving me this high bill because you are using electricity, you are using this, and I know it's not economical. I'll go back to a local producer, somebody that will do it for me cheap, and then I'll just leave. You understand? So, because of these constraints that are around the rice production, you have that in the market. There's nothing we can do about that.
All right. As we wrap up, because time is not on our side, I just want you to touch on some other things that people can do. They can be as a source of income or generate employment for people in the process of planting to harvesting stage and post-harvesting.
For rice?
Because I learned that the husk can be used for cosmetics.
Very good.
I just want you to touch on those things. Other things that people may not know rice or rice plant is used for.
All right.
Briefly.
Yeah, well, after removing the bran, rice bran is it's a minor constituent of poultry, but at least it's a constituent of poultry. Yes,
their feed now. We're talking about their feed.
Yes, and I even saw from the tomato farm, they are trying to they planted tomato seedlings in the rice husk. I asked the guy, what I mean, how could this be? He told me it's even better than soy. And that's they just
Talking of nutrients
I'm telling
value.
you.
Wow.
So then this rice bran or this rice shell, whatever, can also be used for briquette. Briquette, it's even very good economically to burn.
What's briquette?
It's that husk that comes from the rice. If you burn it, it sustains better than gas and it's flameless.
Wow.
And it's very, very, very economical.
So it could be used for cooking.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Briquette.
Wow.
So, and getting it, we are trying to see anyway. I don't know but I know that government is really trying in terms of the briquette production now, because they want to get a kind of chain to where people can be using that as a source of energy generation, either in the production industry or the processing industry. You shall need it. So briquette is very, very useful, but people don't know that this rice bran and rice husk can also be this good at many research still undergoing on the process of using the rice waste management and stuff, but then I still see some of them very, very important. If you tell me that rice can do well with planting of tomato, I don't know how you have done it, but I saw the thing myself. I saw the sack
and it's sprouted,
and I'm telling you, it's even harvesting the tomatoes. Not that the man is just planting, he's harvesting the tomatoes. I can even call him if you want me to talk to him. So just to bear an example for that. But basically, for now, anything that has to do with organic produce, because that is, even if it is a waste, it's an organic produce, it surely have a second value, and that's the difference between a waste and a byproduct.
Interesting.
That's it.
All right, Mr. Agoroye, it's time that we leave on the show, but before we go, I want to say thank you very much for yielding to our invitation on the show this afternoon to talk about rice farming. I'm sure people have had a lot of information from you, experience, gathering from your experience this afternoon, all about rice cultivation, harvesting, and some other things that you've touched on. On behalf of the CEO, who is also the executive producer of this program, the person of Mr. Oluwatobiloba Odunton, and the crew, we want to present to you this little token of our love to you. We want to say thank you for coming. Àwọn ọ̀rẹ́ yín, àwọn boys yín tẹ́jọ́ wà lórí fún dárúkọ wọn, kí wọn, dẹ̀ kí iléeṣẹ́ SPFS TV náà bá ṣe lọ.
Ẹ ṣé gan-an, mo appreciate yín. Iléeṣẹ́ yẹn á máa gòkè sí ní lágbára Ọlọ́run. I am very, very impressed, honestly, coming around to see something Agric TV. It's an innovation that is standing out currently in the country, and you continue to stand out.
Amen. Thank
So
you.
on behalf of my crew, we appreciate you, Mr. Olamide of Cookies Farm, my amiable group leader, and all the Glad Tidings group, and the whole Gold Prime Agro Services group, my wife, my son, my everybody there, my workers. We say a big thank you to SPFS. Thank you very much,
people. You've heard from Mr. Agoroye this afternoon, the CEO of Gold Prime Agro Services Limited, all the way from Abeokuta. You can see we are getting very serious about agriculture, don't you think? Yes, that is why you should join us next week again on another episode of Let's Talk Agric, where we'll be looking at another crop or plant, on the show. I remain Sisi Teju, Olamide Teju, show is the name, together with Okpeyemi, Okpemipo, and Bisola I have worked this afternoon. And I want to say thank you on behalf of the head of the studio, Samson Omoni, that you have been wonderful for staying tuned to the show this afternoon. Until next week, make sure you keep growing, make sure you keep farming, make sure you get agriculture right. See you next week.